All right, let's get more on China's decision to scrap presidential term limits, effectively meaning that President Xi Jinping could remain in power for life. Let's talk to the Financial Times correspondent, Gabriel Wildau, who's in Shanghai. Thank you very much for joining us here on Sky World News. Maybe you could start by telling us why this has come about.
Since President Xi Jinping, who's also General Secretary of the Chinese Communist Party, took over in late 2012 and then as president in 2013, he's consolidated his power over policymaking and over his potential political rivals through this fierce anti-corruption campaign that has seen so many powerful officials be taken down and sent to prison. What we saw yesterday essentially formalized this massive consolidation of power with amending the state constitution to abolish the term limits that previously limited Chinese presidents to 2 5-year terms for a total of 10 years in power. So certainly there were signs before that Xi Jinping was the most powerful leader of China since at least Deng Xiaoping, if not Mao Zedong. But what we saw yesterday puts that in writing, if you like.
So why has this come now, then?
Well, if you ask the advocates of the policy, they'll say that this was necessary because actually the president is not the most powerful role for President Xi Jinping. It's his role as General Secretary of the Communist Party that is actually the source of most of his power. And there were no term limits on the General Secretary position. So the advocates will say that it's just simply bringing into line the role of president with the role of General Secretary. But I think this is the culmination of this consolidation of power. And this sends a clear message that Xi Jinping is the man in charge and will accept no challenges. And he wants to send that message now so that he can push his agenda through and consolidate his power with no challenge.
What's going to be the likely reaction, do you think, to this decision?
Well, in terms of China's role in the world, I think we can see President Xi's strongman rule as part of a broader move towards an emphasis on Chinese national greatness through President Xi's initiatives like the Belt and Road, which is his ambitious program to build infrastructure links between China and much of the developing world, or this concept of the China Dream, which has to do with restoring China's historic greatness as a regional and even a global power, and the idea of the so-called China model, where China is increasingly willing to promote its style of government and its style of state-led economic development as a model for other developing countries to emulate. So I think President Xi's domestic consolidation of political power enables him to push China's influence abroad even more confidently.
And domestically, as you mentioned there, at home, what does this do? I mean, already we're hearing reports of censorship and a clampdown there on the reaction.
Well, certainly we've seen a tightening of the prohibitions on public dissent and public criticism of Chinese leadership since President Xi took power in 2012 and 2013. My view is that this particular move may not have such a great impact insofar as that was already well underway. And even if President Xi were to step down at the end of his 10-year term in power, it's very unlikely that his successor would be willing to substantially loosen controls on the media, for example, or to push forward some kind of transition towards liberal democracy. So I think, throughout China's reform period since 1978, there have been times when Western analysts have predicted, oh, this is the moment when China might start to move towards democracy. And those predictions have proved to be wrong. I see a pretty strong consensus within the Chinese Communist Party that authoritarian rule is what they want to maintain, whether it's President Xi Jinping or some future president.
All right, we'll leave it there. Gabriel Wildau from the Financial Times speaking to us from Shanghai. Thank you very much indeed for your time today.